Hey kids, this is Ivan. How you doing? You ever have that feeling that you just don't belong or that you don't deserve to be where you are or what you have? And this is accompanied by a fear that people might find out. And if they find out, well, you might be in some kind of trouble. The other day, yesterday as a matter of fact, I went to a school play with my girlfriend Susan. I went with her and her two children. And at the end of the play, her oldest child, Ali, wanted to talk to their friend. That was the lead in the play, or one of the leads. But it was the last day of the play, so all the cast and crew were going to do a strike, tearing down the set. And so they had all just gone by, through these doors, and it said something about nobody that's not a member of the cast or crew past these doors. And, kids were pouring through. I said, Ollie, why don't you just go in there really fast and talk to him? I mean, I don't think anybody's going to stop you. You just look like another kid. But Ollie said, well, no, I wouldn't belong. So fair enough. They're right. They wouldn't have belonged. And they would have felt very uncomfortable had they gone back there. What if you felt like that all the time? So 40 years prior, so I'll say 4 decades because that sounds shorter, I went to my math class. It was the first day of school, so I dutifully went to the room that it said on my schedule, and I sat down, and the teacher said, okay, we're going to do some problems first to get you guys just kind of back up to speed. I said, okay. And so he hands out these things, and the pencil starts scratching furiously on the paper, and that sound permeates the room, but it wasn't coming from my desk because I look at the paper and I turn it upside down and sideways, and I could identify a few Arabic numerals on it, but that was it. All the rest of the symbols just were completely unrecognizable to me. So crestfallen, I knew what had happened, so I went up to the desk and I said, I think I'm in the wrong class. And the teacher said, okay, yeah, I guess you are, and sent me to the office. And, I had that other feeling. I knew at that point I did not belong. Had I stayed in that class and tried to keep up, I would have been a fraud. I would have been an imposter. Another thing happened, though, at that point, because I never forgot this, is at that point, the other students could hear me having this conversation with the teacher, and they were kids that looked up, and these were all smart kids, and I had this feeling, of being exposed and that I wasn't as smart as people thought I was. And I didn't even belong with the smart kids. I didn't even belong with the nerdy kids. And that had been an identity of mine, or one of the identities of mine, for a very long time. As going back even further, if you can believe it, I remember being in grade school, maybe second or third grade, and having this constant fantasy that I'd been dropped here by aliens. And, soon they were going to come back and pick me up and take me back home. And, I could tell them what I learned about Earth. And this, was because I just had this profound feeling, as long as I can remember, of just not belonging, about not fitting in, about being an imposter, as a child. I just didn't seem to fit in with anybody. And this carried on into adulthood, where I don't know if you can relate with this, but I felt almost as if there was this, adult verification card that you're supposed to have in your wallet, but I missed that day. And, if somebody asked me to present it, well, I couldn't. I couldn't prove that I was in the right place and that I belonged, and it would have felt just like Ali backstage. But this has pervaded my life. Even when I knew I was in a situation where I was competent, that I knew what I was doing, that I'd earned my dues, things like being a founding member of a band. And I always felt like I kind of bit on the outside, like the odd person out, or being in RPG groups where I'm a vibrant member of. All these kind of things. You're still plagued with that feeling of not quite belonging, about being a fraud or an imposter. And, this is kind of like the, when I hit the learning phase of any endeavor, whatever it might be, where I've hit that wall where I don't know anything else about this subject. And I'm starting to learn things, and maybe it's a little bit harder to learn these things, or whatever it happens to be, or I know, geez, I forgot this thing that, I'd learned before. That part can really make me feel like I'm a fraud, that I really don't know anything. And if I don't know everything, then I don't know anything at all. And that's the constant feeling of being an imposter, whether it's my job or a hobby or a subject that I'm very passionate about, whatever it happens to be. And that feeling of perfectionism, of having to justify my existence, is a feeling that I can remember from birth, really, really early on. And so some of this is kind of nature and some of this is kind of nurture, and I got a lot of bad messages, but it's well, now what? And there's definitely the Peter principle. There's been jobs, I recall one in particular, where my first wife did not want to be married to a person that was doing the kind of job I wanted. She wanted somebody with a more prestigious job, so she pushed me to apply for and take this other job in a different department. And it was something where I was just kind of barely competent at. And I knew it. And, so that hurt. But you'll see lots of other people being promoted to their level of incompetence. Some of them don't know it at all. Some of them know, and they just try to fake it, But there's also this thing called the Dunning-Kruger effect. And this is where people that aren't terribly bright or just don't know a lot about a subject, well, they tend to overestimate their intelligence or their competence or their ability, how much they know about anything. Sometimes they even get elected president. The other thing about the Dunning-Kruger effect, though, is that the people that are much more intelligent, that are really knowledgeable about a subject, they tend to underestimate their ability and their knowledge and their intelligence. Partly because they're aware, that they don't know everything. That the more you learn about something, the more you know, the more you realize that you don't know, or there's so much stuff that you don't know. And so a certain level of self-doubt is healthy. But, too much, of course, well, that, and I don't know if there's ever been any studies done with the Dunning-Kruger effect and imposter syndrome, and if these things tend to correlate, on the higher level of competence. It's possible. I don't know. Now, at this point, if you're looking for 4 easy steps to cure your imposter syndrome and move on with your life and take charge, you're watching the wrong video. However, if you watch some other video and they promise to do that, they're lying to you. And in fact, they are a fraud and an imposter at that point. It's not easy. For me, it's very often taking an honest look at my abilities, my accomplishments, and reminding myself of what I've actually done, what I actually know, the fact that I deserve to be here, that I don't need to justify my existence at all, which is another kettle of fish, but that's important. But also, I do know things. I'm not stupid. The opinions and regard of other people that know me is also something I need to look at. And if you have problems with imposter syndrome or talking, you look at your friends and say, if they regard you, if they think, you're on the up and up, that you're competent, they can't all be wrong. And also one of the things that, helps me very often is I know lots of people that clearly are very competent and very intelligent that doubt themselves. And so I'm thinking, well, if they doubt themselves, if they have those moments of self-doubt and feeling like an imposter, well, it's not just me. And I think, if anything, the purpose of this video, or part of the takeaway, hopefully, if you suffer from this, is to understand that it's not just you. There's other people that feel this way. It's okay. It's a common condition. And in identification with other people, there's a lot of strength in that. But it's an ongoing struggle, and it's one of those things that I have to remember. The things I talked about, but also that I don't need to justify my existence. I belong here just as much as anybody else. I don't need to fit into what other people think I should be doing, how other people want to behave. I didn't fit in with a lot of groups of kids, and I didn't care about what they did anyway. But I really wanted to fit in. I don't need to care about what the other adults think about me, and certainly as a kid, I got bad messages, but I don't really need to care about what a lot of other people think about me. I don't need to prove myself, And, the one I need to prove myself to, or the most critical voice often is the one in my own head. But, it's a constant struggle. It's not an easy thing to live with. But it's something that, it takes a lot of perseverance and honesty and realizing that I do belong, that you belong. That you're not an imposter, that you're not a fraud. You're a deserving human being that has real talents, real skills, and real knowledge. So there.